yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, what is this, Connor?
So
what
we're
are we
having
doing?
a discussion about the Master, and I'm trying to defend people that we disagree
You're
with.
playing. You're basically playing devil's advocate.
Okay. So
I actually might include this in the raid. Actually, maybe.
sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Where do we begin?
Well, what's the arguments that we've made so far? I guess because I think they're actually quite valid.
Right. Okay.
So we mentioned the Master's incompetence
Right. Yeah. So
in Spyfall.
So go ahead and explain why the Master is incompetent in Spyfall, and then compare it to the Sound of Drums.
Okay, so the Master in Spyfall is extremely incompetent because on pretty much like 5 separate occasions, he is actively trying to kill the Doctor and fails miserably when he really shouldn't have. So one of the examples is in the car and driving off the cliff when they have a laser in the car. It's badly done because none of the people, like the companions and the Doctor, like they don't even move when the laser hits. It just misses. Even though in literally a second ago it completely obliterated the guy in the car. But also they could literally just drive into a wall, the barricade, or one of the other cars and they would die anyway. So I don't know why driving towards a cliff, it gives them time to, save themselves.
And talk about the times he's tried to capture the Doctor in Spyfall.
Yeah, so obviously you get the when you get the tower scene on the Alpha Tower. So they're having the conversation, right? Then the Doctor gets a phone call, right? Why does the Master pick up on that, even though the Doctor is acting really strange in that? Why let her have any sort of devices that could literally... He knows who the Doctor is. He knows how smart she is. I find it really hard to believe the Master wouldn't even question
Okay.
having the phone. So the Master is incompetent in Spyfall.
All right. Now, what would you say to someone that would say that Chibnall has deliberately written him to be incompetent?
Why is that good writing? What's the argument for saying that is good writing?
Well, they'd say it would make for interesting character drama, I suppose. I can't think I can't actually delve into the details because I don't have a quote from someone, but I can only guess. Good.
So the argument that you're advocating for, you don't necessarily agree with it, obviously.
Hell no, I'm a lawyer at the moment. I'm advocating for the opposite side.
The argument is that because the Master is incompetent in Spyfall, it moves the plot along. Because if he was, we wouldn't get the plot we got. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is there are no stakes.
Okay.
Therefore,
how do you feel about someone saying, okay, he was competent enough to capture them in a plane and send them to their death until the Kasavan reversed it? It's easily solved because the Doctor uses obviously a device, so it's very easily hackable. Yes, but he had,
it was easily installed.
No, but even though they found a way around that with the Kasavan teleporting the Doctor and also with her putting up the signs, it still stands that the Master got them in a situation where they almost died. So he did technically...
Why does the Kasavan attack the Doctor?
Good question.
Like, why? Why not just leave her in the plane?
A good question for another time.
Well, who's on command was that? Was it just the Kasavan?
Well, you would have to imagine that the Kasavan find the Doctor useful.
What they want to strip her DNA?
Probably, yeah. I have no idea.
Why?
No idea.
Why? What's the game for the Kasavan? We don't know who the Kasavan are.
I don't know. I don't know.
If it's on the Master's command, then just why? What's the point? Just leave her in the plane. She's going to regenerate, but you know where she's going to land, probably.
Okay. Okay. Compare that to John Sims' Master's competence in The Sound of Drums.
Johnson becomes the Prime Minister, captures Martha's family, and decimates 1/10 of the population, and kills the President of the United States. Mm-hmm. The Master in Sound of Drums is extremely competent. He knows exactly what he's doing, while being a bit aloof. he still knows what the fuck he's doing and know what his plan is.
Well, he's basically, I would say, obviously I'm not advocating now, I'm actually speaking my opinion. I would say that him fooling around is very much him trying to sort of shove it in the Doctor's face that he has power a lot of the time. But then, of course, there is also the element of him having like an interest in certain things, like, you know, when he's watching Teletubbies, he's interested in like the bizarre nature of humans.
Yeah, he's interested in the human mind, not to the same extent as Tennant, where he like cares for it, but he's just so fascinated that humans.
It's a bit like
have these ideas.
It's a bit like Arthur Weasley, how he's fascinated by Muggles and he talks to Harry about a rubber duck. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, Sim mocking Tennant is very much intentional because of how much Tennant adores the human race. Like, since Gallifrey's been destroyed, because I think it's very well established within New Who that Earth is his second home, despite how like for example with Eccleston, how like lost he was. He grew to love like Earth.
Yeah. Anyway,
which is a line that is used in fucking of all episodes, fucking in the Forest of the Night.
Anyway, going back to focusing on what we're talking about. So you talked about in Spyfall how the Master capturing the Doctor and co was easily reversed. How would you feel about someone that would come in and say that what the Master did in The Sound of Drums was easily reversed by what happened at the end of Last of the Time Lords? I personally, I don't think it was easily reversed. I actually have quite controversial opinions on that. I actually quite like that ending. However, what would you say to it?
I mean, the actual instant of them physically turning back time, like destroying the machine, is like, yeah, I imagine that would be how it works to negate the paradox machine. The whole space Jesus thing, I don't like, but the character stuff I love, and I think it's very well done. And everyone's argument for that is like, there's no consequence in that, but there is. The whole people, everybody on the Valiant.
But hang on a second though. How could you then argue that John Sims' Master has competence when you said that Darwin's doesn't, yet he manages to capture them in the plane?
A villain can have some essence of incompetence, but not to the degree of Sasha's Master, who fucks up.
So what makes the situation? What makes the situation in Spyfall different from the one in Last of the Time Lords?
Because Sasha literally has the Doctor practically on her deathbed on many occasions and fails to do so on every single occasion. With Sim, he fucks up like once out of like 10.
Right. So he has a higher percentage of success. Even though just like Spyfall, everything is reversed at the end. In terms of the plot, obviously, because there are character things that carry over in both. Because Sasha's Master is completely incompetent, there is no stakes or tension with that story. You know the Doctor's going to survive because of how bad Sasha's Master is because of his incompetence. With Sims, you don't know how it's going to turn out because of how well they've done a good job at putting up the Master as a very, very well competent villain. But again, going back to the plane scene, wouldn't that plane scene where he captures them and lures them in be counting as competent at the very least?
Sure, that's one. Well, to be fair, in that scene, he fucks up and reveals himself as the Master.
Oh, yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Like, maybe the one thing I could say, he probably did had it sort of planned to reveal himself in that moment because the TARDIS is on the outside of the plane, sure. But the way it's very confusing if he actually fucked up there with like, I was never good at sprinting. I think he always pretty initial to reveal himself, probably like by surprise, saying Barton is on the plane and there's a bomb, and he'd be like, oh my god. Oh wait, I'm the Master. It's like, but yeah, a little small thing there shows he's just, I would say he's a bit incompetent in that thing there as well. But okay. Also, it's also Barton's plan. Well, that's not actually, to be fair, he was called off the plane. But yeah. Okay,
then moving on to the other side of it comes with the argument that many people give that they far prefer, they much more enjoy Sacha Darwin's more rabid side over Sim's sort of childish craziness. You know, if we want to point to exact examples, so people have a point of reference, in The Sound of Drums, John Sim watches the Teletubbies and laughs at it, but how bizarre it is. He also, you know, claps his hands together, plays, you know, Here Comes the Drums on a speaker or something. He, you know, fools around. He's very crazy. In The End of Time, that gets ramped up even more when he's, you know...
It does, yes.
He's cannibal, he's eating humans, he's saying things like, hot, sticky, fat, blood-red food. I bet you taste great. You know, that stuff like that. And it's very well known that people find that side of John Sim's master extremely annoying, and it puts them off his character. It also they say that they can't take him seriously because of it, because they don't believe him as a threat, because he's just so silly and over the top.
I mean, he is a threat because he, again, it goes back to the competent thing, but he, on many occasions, he put the Dr. Martha and Jack on the most wanted list.
Yes, I know this,
yeah.
Obviously.
I'm just saying towards the argument.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate. So, especially with The End of Time, they don't feel like they can take him seriously as a villain because of how over the top and silly he is portrayed. Then with Sasha's master, it seems like people prefer his take on it because he sort of blends. He has a bit of suaveness to him in some respects, but then he also blends in together this sort of almost rabid dog kind of personality to him. And for people...
Sim was also a rabid dog in End of Time.
Well, yeah, when he chewed the bone.
Exactly, he chews the bone like a rabid dog.
Yeah, but I mean, I would actually say it's possible that Chibnall may have based some of that off End of Time anyway. However,
I wouldn't be surprised. So he's always constantly stealing ideas from better stories.
But the argument for Sacha Darwin over John Sim in that regard is from what I've seen is that Darwin's portrayal of insanity is more believable. That's how people feel about it, because he doesn't go over the top, is what they say.
He does, though. Mm-hmm. Darwin's master absolutely goes over the top. You know the bit where where the Silver Lady's starting to activate, how he just frothles at the mouth, basically. I would say that's over the top. Because why? He's almost like he can't contain himself, which I would like as a concept, but there's no real I don't get why. Because in Dr. Fools, don't they establish that the drums are out of the master's head?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is established that after the end of time, he ripped the drums out of his head somehow with some weird magic. But
I think the Doctor says that they take away his condition.
Yeah.
The Time Lords. So Missy doesn't have it. She's just Master's always been bad. So it still makes sense for Missy in series 8 to be like she is. But yeah, I obviously again it goes back to we don't know where the fuck this master lines up. So does he have the drums? Does he not? I don't know.
I don't think he. Yeah. I think the drumming has been removed, but obviously in Spyfall Part 2, it is a trigger.
They reference it.
There is when he hears the drums, he's reminded of it.
Mm-hmm. If he doesn't have it, then that fucks up things a bit more.
I have said to you on private message, but I'll say it here so people have context.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so with the drumming. The criticism of the drumming comes from people not liking the choice that Davies made to have that be the reason the master goes insane. People much prefer if it was a different explanation, if it was more of I suppose a series of events that led to a decision, like when you think of Davros's backstory and how war, how he was so wronged in war, how this innocent child got corrupted by war. I think that kind of sort of moral change of ideals that causes them to change into the person they become due to their circumstances is the kind of thing that people would have preferred for the master, whereas what Russell T Davies did was he retconned it so that when the Master was a child, they obviously put the drums in his head, which slowly built and built and built, and he became more insane as the drums increased. So, looking at that, like, regardless of whether you fill in the whole... Because I've heard you say before, you know, there's more justification for John Sims' insanity because of the drums, whereas for Darwin, we don't know if he has the drums or not, so it's unclear. However, what it seems to me is the people that prefer Darwin over Sim is that, firstly, they don't like the explanation of the drumming, and secondly, they much prefer the way Darwin handles the more unhinged side of the Master than John Sim.
Well, I don't agree that Sasha handles it well, because I feel like that it's quite inconsistent with, well, not in terms of like, oh, it doesn't make sense, but it feels like there's no like level, there's no like barrier of like what causes. I don't know. It's really hard to explain, like, because I don't know what this character is other than he's crazy. I don't get what makes him tick, what makes him just froth the mouth. It just feels like it's at random points. Sometimes he's a bit calm, sometimes he's a bit all over the place. Like, I don't get his character because they don't establish who he is other than he hates the Doctor. For some reason. We then later learn it's because of the timeless children, which is dumb in itself, so it's a dumb reason for the Master to hate the Doctor. And to destroy Gallifrey. There's no nuance to Sasha's like character. It's just a basic Master with the elements of Sim without the actual reasoning for it.
I'm struggling to find more sources of defense. So, if you've got time,
I know.
would you?
I just want to quickly say, like, I just want to quickly say that when people say that Sasha handles the craziness better than Sim, I massively disagree, because again, I always bring this up, but the fucking goddamn scene where he acts like Daffy Duck is so much worse than anything Sim does in End of Time.
I think you will find many people that would disagree with you on that.
Why?
Because they would argue that when John Sim's crazy in the End of Time, it's far worse.
Why?
Well, because him shouting like Daffy Duck is weird, but it's a reaction to, you know, it's just a sort of reaction to him being taken over by the Cyberium. Whereas, you know, him shouting dinner time and bloody massacring a chicken is just very obnoxious to them.
Sure. But I don't think that then makes Sasha like a million times better. I don't think that makes it...
Well,
I still think it's bad.
It does to them because they don't find Sasha annoying, whereas they find John Sim annoying.
I think the Daffy Duck scene and Dinner Time are pretty much similar.
Yeah, well, there you go then. What else can I say?
I don't see the, like... No, yeah, true. But, like, I don't... Those scenes of, like, Sasha going crazy without, like, a real trigger for it for no reason, I would say is the same as, like...
I mean, I would
John
say...
Sim
Would you say it's really no reason when you could argue that the Cyberium takeover is quite a painful experience?
Well, okay, then I can make the same argument for Sim. He's like they established throughout the entire story of End of Time, he's dying, his head is split open, he's in pain.
Yeah.
So I could literally make the same exact argument for Sim.
What would you say to the people that argue that the End of Time with the Master's craziness, in terms of the way the story is presented, is a much harsher tonal shift than Sasha's?
Again, Sasha screams like Daffy Duck.
Yes, but then
he literally goes woohoo in that.
But then you...
It's the tonal shift in that.
Yes, but then you look at the End of Time, you've got a scene like when there's literally dead people, like skulls in a fucking, you know, food van, but it's some man yelling dinner time, and it's very silly at the same time of people literally being dead. You know, or you know, you cut from, say for example, you cut from like a really emotional tear-jerking scene with the Doctor and Wilf where he's talking about how he's, you know, angsty about how he's going to die and he doesn't want to go, and then you cut straight to the Master massacring a chicken and like wiping his hands all over the camera and all that. Someone would argue that the End of Time has tonal whiplash, whereas Sasha's Master...
I could probably say the same. Okay, say, then we'll go into Timeless Children, when we get this important moment with the Doctor discovering that she's the Timeless Child, right?
Yeah.
In the same episode, Ryan throws a ball.
Yeah, but it's not... The whiplash isn't as harsh. It's more spaced out. Like, the scenes aren't cutting in and out of each other. Like, you know, you get there's the scene where the Doctor's chasing the Master, who's literally like flying with lightning, right? And it's like this is okay. Like, so the like Master's taken over. The Master's The Master's taken over the world. He's let loose, and he's probably going to kill a lot of people. And the Doctor can't catch up to him. And then cut to old people taking a picture with him, grabbing his ass.
No, yeah, I would say, yeah, that is tonally inconsistent, but then that doesn't make...
It's a big shift from what we had in the previous scene. Whereas...
Yeah, here's the thing, I agree that End of Time is totally inconsistent. I'd say more part one, but then that doesn't make Sasha's tonally inconsistent.
Well, I mean, I suppose the argument that people have is that they don't find Spyfall totally inconsistent, or Timeless Children, maybe.
I would say it's totally... with Sasha's character.
Yeah, okay, so now go to the example you're...
Because that's what it's about. I think with Spyfall, it's just when Graham does the goddamn shoe shove against the Kazavan. It's meant to be played as a really serious moment, but then he's just dancing on the feet, and then for some reason they escape. I don't know how they escape.
Yep.
I find that really weird when you get a scene of like the Doctor looking over Gallifrey and it's completely destroyed.
Yeah, I feel that way too, but then you get people that say that they find the Graham joke funny and they don't find the Sim memery funny at all.
Okay, so if it's funny...
One argument that someone could make is that Graham's shoe joke is intended to be humorous, whereas they would argue that the John Sim stuff is intended to be scary, but it's not.
I don't think it's intended to be fully scary. There's absolutely... on purpose a comedy element to the John Sim stuff.
I agree, but people say that about the Master. They say they can't take him seriously as a threat because it's so silly. Whereas the Graham scene with the shoe joke is actually intended to be comedy.
But for when I'm like in that scene, they are being chased by one of the villains. But they're now shown again. It's the same with Sasha's Master being quite weak. It shows off the Kazavan are quite well. If an old man like Graham can just tap his feet and kill a bunch of them and escape when there's literally probably 20 or 30 of them.
Yep.
Obviously, that's not to do with the Master, but it's to get the point across that the tonal inconsistencies with like Chibnall's writing is just as bad as probably like those instances in End of Time.
I think you'd have a very hard time arguing that to people. I think people would definitely disagree with you. They'd say that End of Time is far more tonally inconsistent and jarring.
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I think there's a lot of things in Spyfall that don't... Okay, here's another one. I think I mentioned to you. Graham, when Jodie says that the woman on the table isn't going to live... obviously Graham asked if she's going to be okay. Next scene, he's cracking jokes about the laser shoes.
Yep.
Again, Spyfall is not... Again, I'm not saying that End of Time is great. Like, I'm not. But to say that something like Spyfall is, like, in terms of its tonal consistency, is better than it by, like, miles and is way better written, I think is ridiculous.
Do we want to quickly go over the video that we were discussing about this topic? Specifically this section. Would you like to do that?
Sure. Just remind me what the video we were talking about.
Oh, the JXE one.
Oh yeah, the live stream.
Yeah, yes. Specifically when people were talking about the master, so we can grab from examples that they've given, so that I don't have to play devil's advocate for them.
I can't remember specific like the in detail things they said, but I remember one of the points someone made was that they said that the scripts that Sasha got were what they wish Sim got. So like, because I guess they find Sasha like not quite similar, but probably same sort of like beats that like Sim might have. But they say that Sasha has the scripts like.
Well, yeah, I remember when I did the Spyfall Part 1 panel discussion on Lord Slar's channel, Shay Kellier was on here, and he said that he's obviously, because he was part of the End of Time rant, he's obviously not at all a fan of John Sim's master. It's made very clear. And he says that Sacha Dhawan's master has a lot of similar traits. However, for some reason, he much prefers Sasha. He finds him very charming, whereas he finds John Sim annoying.
Say again?
What did you miss?
I was just quickly look. I just got the video up.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just to see if I could.
Well, in the Spyfall Part 1's panel discussion, Shay Kellier, obviously, because he was on the End of Time rant back in 2016, we all know that how he feels about John Sim and how he hates John Sim's master. But he said that when watching Sasha, he saw that he had a lot of similar traits to John Sim's master. However, he found Sasha quite charming, whereas he finds John Sim very irritating.
Did he give an example why? Or of like what he felt the differences were?
Well, he couldn't. He actually confessed he couldn't put his finger on it. Really, he just He described the scene. Obviously, it was the plane scene, and he said that he talked about what he did in the plane scene. He gave the example of the plane scene itself.
Felt, even from my initial viewing of it, I felt he was pretty much doing things very similar to John Sim.
Yeah. He said that there were similarities between them, and he couldn't put his finger on why, but he found Sasha very charming, whereas comparatively he found John Sim very irritating.
I think in that scene, it's probably the best scene that Sasha does. It's later on that becomes a problem where he becomes, again, incompetent, but then it feels like that he's, I guess the character feels like he's unleashing, he's like, because he contained it all, I guess. Now he's feeling a bit more crazy. Like, for example, the first scene we get of him in Part 2 of Spyfall, he finds out the Doctor is alive and starts bashing his head into the console. I find that really weird, because Sim never even did anything like that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you could even extend that argument and say that Sim did things that no masters before did either. So, is there really grounds for that?
Watch TV about Teletubbies and find it fascinating that human minds would come up with this kind of stuff.
I mean, more than that. There's things that Sim does that no other master had done before. You know, like thinking of
marry someone.
A way to play with the Doctor would be to have him push him around in a chair. Is something that other masters before arguably wouldn't have done.
Well, he's mocking him. He's humiliating him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's played for like a comedy thing, sure, but if you actually read what the master is actually like doing, he's mocking the Doctor. He's like basically showing like how he failed miserably, because it's been 1 year since the last episode, and the master's been ruling ever since, and he's just like he in his eyes he won. There's no chance going back. Mm-hmm. So every day he's going to humiliate him. I don't find that kind of stuff like silly, because when you actually pay attention to what he's actually doing, he's mocking him.
Can you link me the thing in the Discord?
The live stream?
Yes.
Go.
To break my advocation for a second, all I want to say is there's a scene in End of Time Part 2 where the Master says, "What would I be without that noise?" And now we know.
That's fucking yeah. He'd be inconsistently crazy.
Yeah. So have you found the point where it starts, where they start talking about the Master? I think it's around like half an hour.
It might be.
Quite a big extent with that. I don't know. With me, I've just got this sort of.
I love it when George Ace Creeper says, "I don't know." It's so northern.
Sort of optimistic.
I find my issue with the panel. I didn't think it was bad, but I think my issue with the panel is that it just felt very basic.
I don't not like.
I guess
they're like the highest subscribed YouTubers that
they are.
Was doing.
It felt like they were saying
outside of a couple. There's a couple that weren't on there, like who had it.
Because I guarantee you, with at least with like initial stuff,
some of it doesn't.
When they were talking about what they,
I definitely like it.
Well, I guess it was more to get to know people, which is absolutely fine. It's just when they started talking about Series 12, I think it was just very basic stuff that whole, so many people have talked about before.
I can't say I prefer the Chip and Dale era to
self personally. I was work with somebody.
Just trying to.
Wait, whoa! I didn't expect that. That's mental.
Yeah.
Like the Master and
I just don't know when they took out the Master.
Is it 41-ish?
Easily excited over very little things. So it's like, yeah, no, I find it's later on a little bit more enjoyment out of that. So I mean,
I think it is,
but they do them all at the same time.
I think it is later.
If they just did them individually, they end up not focusing on the stuff that, the loudest detractors tend to shout about. But about the one common criticism that actually.
He's one of them said that he's his favorite Master since Anthony Ailing.
But also, really, you kind of pity him a little bit as well. And it's because it takes that sort of fractured psyche that Sim had.
Okay, it's before that.
Lead that into the story a bit more.
Okay.
It just sort of, I don't know. The TARDIS is too cramped, and it just feels like they were so.
TARDIS is too cramped.
Whenever it comes back.
Paul and Jason, do you guys have anything to add?
Oh, hang on, I think it might be around 50.
No, I agree with a lot of what's being said there, actually. There's been a very interesting discussion back and forth. There's nothing that I really would disagree with. I think there's some very sound logic in there. It's really good. Guys, I have to dash, unfortunately, because I'm due back on a live feed.
But if I could say one thing in the Chip and Dale's favour, in my opinion, I don't
Masters come way too soon.
If everyone else agrees, but I personally really love the way he characterises his villains. I think some of the stories they could be more interesting. But I love his depiction of this sarcastic, sardonic Dalek in Resolution, which gives the military a 3-second warning. Which is
they also fully admit that the Doctor not acknowledging Missy in any way, shape, or form is ridiculous.
Which is a face concept, and I also think that this Master.
Okay, here we go. Okay, go at 50-54 if you can get to that, or 50-50.
50. Okay. 50-50.
Do you have it on 50-50?
50-54. 50-50, 44.
Just go to 50-50.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Right. Yep, I can hear you. Okay. 50-50, I'm on.
Okay, so I'll just I'll throw it into the video thing so they can see what we're looking at. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is a stream that was done recently between a whole bunch of YouTubers, and JX, he uploaded it as a stream.
Yeah, he streamed, I think it was like some sort of panel thing, and Jay asked if he could stream it, and they allowed him to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will...
It was interesting.
I will show on screen the video source of what we're watching.
Okay.
I'll just put that there, and then that there, and then I'll line that up there. And then also, it was interesting to find out that his favorite Doctor is Paul McGann. I found that very interesting. It shows
Jay.
He's big into Big Finish.
Oh yeah, he is. I asked him on a Metal stream, what his peak Doctor Who would be, and I said Series 4, and he said Big Finish with Paul McGann and stuff.
I've just been listening to some of that actually.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of it, obviously, because there's there's 2001.
Just quickly, I was like,
there's 2001 to 2007 with Charlie Pollard. Then there's like 4 or 5 seasons with Lucy Miller. Then there's Dark Eyes, which has 4 sets. Doom Coalition that has 4 sets. Ravenous that has 4 sets. Stranded, which will have 4 sets. And then there's Time War, which also has 4 sets. So there's a lot. There's a lot of McGann. Anyway, what were you saying?
I was going to say, like, I think I said this to you the other day when we were talking about canon. Is it like a hot take for me to say that I don't find Big Finish canon if there are stories that have been adapted to the show? Is that uncommon?
It's difficult because there's no one that's actually really come out and say. It's not like with Disney and Star Wars where they've established what is and what isn't. There's no one that's really actually come out and confirmed what is and what isn't canon.
Sure. But I find it interesting that where there's... How many adapted stories are there? Is there like just the 2?
There's quite a few. There's quite a few that are adapted. There's...
What, TV?
So, obviously it's all New Who because Big Finish didn't exist, and the novels... Well, there were novels back during the classic era, but the majority of them come from after the cancellation. So, obviously Dalek is adapted from Jubilee.
Yeah. Yes.
Then, I'm just thinking in my head going through...
Human Nature.
Human Nature Family of Blood is adapted from the Human Nature book.
Those are 2 I know.
The Fires of Pompeii is adapted from the Fires of Vulcan, though it is quite a different story. They did change a lot about it. It's still...
Right.
But there's a lot of elements of it that are very similar. The Vampires of Venice is adapted from the Stones of Venice, except, again, very different story. The Vampires of Venice actually takes place in Venice in the past, whereas the Stones of Venice takes place in the future. But again, like there's similar elements that they've taken template from. Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, and World Enough in Time, Dr. Falls are both adapted from Spare Parts.
Right.
Then there's... School Reunion is adapted from a book, I think.
Right. So yeah, what I'm gathering is there are some that are not fully adapted and some that are. I feel like if there's like adaptations from like Big Finish to TV, I find it really hard to say that Big Finish is... I think there probably will be stuff that is canon, but I think there's argument to say that quite a bit of it isn't.
The funny thing is there's adaptations of classic Who stories as well, like the Hungry Earth and Cold Blood is an adaptation of the Silurians, even though they exist on TV together. And there's a bunch of others, like The Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar, borrows a lot of stuff from Davros and Davros, but in my opinion, does so terribly. Heaven Sent is an adaptation of the Holy Terror. It's quite different though. It's the same location though. It's a castle in the middle of nowhere, and it's quite different circumstances. But there are a lot of similarities. Yeah, there's a lot.
I think the argument can be made that it's not canon. So I don't always say. I say with this, like whether it's Doctor Who or Star Wars or anything, when you talk about inconsistencies within Doctor Who, like, I would rather just talk about the show.
Well, to be fair, the show is very inconsistent.
I find, oh yeah, sure, it's gone for 26 years. There are bound to be inconsistencies, but then I would argue that
there's inconsistencies. In terms of historical accuracy in the first season of Classic Who. And the Reign of Terror isn't historically accurate at all. Then when you talk about inconsistencies within the show, they do appear pretty early. One of the biggest ones is how the invasion is meant to take place. It's a unit story, and it's meant to take place 10 years after it broadcasts, so it's meant to take place like 1978 or 9. But then you get to the 80s and you get Mordrin Undead, which says that the Brigadier retired before that, which doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think but I guess you could say with Time Lord lore, like I imagine there are probably some inconsistencies here and there, but you know, again, it's the inconsistencies are bad, and they always will be bad within a show. I don't know. I will admit it's a very complicated situation and conversation
because
to have.
No one's actually put the pin down. No one's actually come out and say that there is a canon.
Yeah,
and I think,
but
I don't think anyone in charge actually wants to do that, because it would be impossible to actually have a canon, because there's so much inconsistency everywhere.
Yeah. Yes, but I will also say, just because the show there is quite a lot of inconsistencies here and there throughout the entire show's history, it does not give the show the right to then make inconsistencies as an excuse for poor writing.
Yes, of course.
That is literally the definition of what the Timeless Children is. Just because there might be inconsistencies here and there, it does not give it that excuse to be like, well, it doesn't matter, it's inconsistent, the show's always been inconsistent.
How would you respond to the argument, I have asked you this before, but I'll ask you this for the viewers. How do you respond to the argument, if someone came in and... this isn't exactly a common argument, it's one that I've actually taken from Lord Slaw. He argues that you shouldn't worry about, or at least, why would you care about the inconsistency of the Master's characterization between Series 10 and 12 if the motivation for the Master's development in Series 10 wasn't justified?
Say the last bit again, so I can fully understand.
So, the Master's motivation to change in Series 10, Lord Slaw argues there's no reason for it, it just happens. And he argues that
he's saying there's no reason for Missy to change.
Yes, he says it's bullshit. Like it's a complete.
That's wrong.
And why is it wrong?
Missy from Series 10 shows clear signs that she regrets what she does, sure, and wants to do right. In the finale, it's obviously then a test. She's trying to change, and she sort of like hints that she might not change.
Why does she regret what she does?
Why does she regret what she's done before?
What causes her mind to change when she starts to regret?
Well, you could argue that I don't know what that would. Well, I could say the drums are no longer in her head because of what we get established within that series.
In Series 8, she very clearly is still, willing to...
I don't like it, but the argument I would make is that Missy is not trying to kill the Doctor, so she clearly has, care for the Doctor.
Yeah, but John Sim wasn't trying to kill the Doctor either.
Oh, yeah, the drums in his role.
But he wasn't trying to kill the Doctor either. There's no difference.
Yeah, he was trying to mock
regard.
him. He was trying to mock him.
Exactly. Same with Missy. On a similar level, I don't know. I don't want to get into Death in Heaven. That's a mess. But the fact of the matter is, what the point that they're trying to make is that Missy starting to regret and changing. There isn't anything that triggers it. It just happens out of nowhere because. And the argument is that Moffat needed a character arc, and he just put one there. And Lord Slaw, in this specific instance, is arguing that because this character arc in Series 10 wasn't warranted, and it wasn't justified, why would you worry about consistency between that and what we're getting in Series 12 if what happened previously didn't make sense either?
Okay. So, even if... I don't agree, but even if you think that the Missy arc is not justified, it happens anyway, sure. And it was completed. You then have to explain why the Master has now decided to go back on that. Like, what is the reason for it? Mm-hmm. Just because if I don't agree that it's bad, I think that's not right at all. But regardless, you have to explain so that we can understand the stakes of the story, why he has changed back. What? So I'm assuming that Sasha changed because he found out the Doctor was the timeless child. Then that's why he destroyed Gallifrey. Mm-hmm. First of all, I want to know how he found out. First of all. Why was that such a big change? If it was post-Missy, was that such a big change that it just undid all of that development? That seems kind of bullshit to me. But we don't know, so it's not explained. Therefore, I can't get invested in the character fully because there's a gap. There's a gap in this character story.
What if you made the argument that what if you view it from the perspective of someone who started watching the show at the start of Series 11?
I mean, it's still the show. It's still the 11th series of the show.
Yeah, but then you could.
I don't agree with that argument.
You could then argue by that same principle of, why would the Master change so radically between Classic and New Who? And I suppose I know exactly what you're going to say because it's the same thing that I would say, and that's the Time War. It's the same reason why the Doctor has quite a bit of change as well. But that is an argument that people would throw, in the sense that how can you argue that this specific disconnect of the character is not justified when there are other disconnects that are there as well?
Actually, you know what I just realised? The Master in Sound the Drums says he's resurrected. And doesn't he say that ever since then, the drums have gotten louder and louder?
Yes.
There you go. He was resurrected, and that caused the drums to get even worse. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't know, for some reason, but they established that that's why.
Yep. Then we find out in the end of time that the reason the drums... I mean, it's very convoluted, but but Rassilon puts the drums in his head to specifically line up with that point in time.
Yes, so they can get the connection.
Yeah, and him being resurrected in the Time War then puts him at the period of time right before the new series. So it is very convoluted. However, to say that, I don't know. What was I can't even remember where I was going to conclude with that, but yeah,
we were talking about how
the drums become a thing once he gets resurrected after Eric Roberts, because obviously in the TV movie the Master dies in quotation marks, even though the Master's died many times.
Yeah, and it's becoming more of a problem now that every time the Master dies, he just comes back.
Well, yeah, it happens almost every single time, like since the Deadly Assassin.
And I hate it. I don't like that.
It seems to be part of his character at this point.
Ugh.
One thing that's very interesting, just a little side note, I've been listening to Dust Breeding, which is a Big Finish audio, and it was a story that was intended to be written for Anthony Ainley's Master, but then Anthony Ainley refused to do Big Finish. So what they ended up doing with the story is they ended up having Jeffrey Beavers play it, and the way that they got around it was they had it that when Anthony Ainley's Master was ripped away of his human body, he retracted back to where he was before he stole the body. That's why it's played by Jeffrey Beavers. I found that a very interesting way around that they did it. The fact that Jeffrey Beavers' Master returned after Anthony Ainley's Master died. That was because
interesting.
And it's it's interesting.
Yeah, but the original point of why it's important to tell the gap between Missy and Sasha's Master is that that's a completed arc. It is now getting changed, so you need to write it well, the explanation of what happened, what caused Missy to change back, to revert back to...
If I were to come up with a theory, I would say that Chris Chibnall wants to avoid explaining it because he wants to tell a story with his own Master, and because having it come after Misty would have so many inconsistencies, he's a bit scared to connect it because then it would come with all those issues.
Well, then I would say it's Chibnall's job as a writer, if he wants to do that, to write the gap. He can't just ignore it. He can't just be like, no, I don't want to do that. I want this because I want to have my cake and eat it. Yeah. No, it's your job as a writer to write that because that is literally your job. Yeah. I'm sorry, but you can't. I'm sorry, but I find it blatantly ignorant and kind of selfish if you want to do something with a character and just ignore something that literally just happened in this character's story and be like, well, the idea I want to do, it makes this inconsistent, but you know what? I'm going to make it vague so no one can question it. I find it extremely lazy. It's pretty selfish as a writer because, again, as a writer, it's your fucking job to write these stories and to make sure it all works well. Like, I can't make it any more simpler than that. Mm-hmm. I always say this, Doctor Who is still a fucking TV show. You need to be consistent. I get the show has been inconsistent on many occasions. That does not give her the right to keep being inconsistent, because that's not how you write television. I will always hate this argument, and every time someone throws it at me, I will throw it back at, this is still a fucking TV show. You need to be consistent. Anyway, and I'll say this, the RTD era is consistent.
For the most part. Almost all of
it.
There's still a few tismy moments, but they are
absolutely
very small. I think the highest criticism that people have is that it's inconsistent character-wise to what we've had in Classic Who, and what we've had since. However, within itself, it's very tightly consistent, I would say. There's a few things, though, that I would point to that I'm like, yeah, no, that was a bit off.
Yeah. Everything has problems. Everything has a flaw.
I'd say, like, if I were to go off the top of my head and think of a few things that you could call inconsistencies in the RTD era, the fact that the Reapers never appear after Father's Day is a problem.
Yeah. The way I would have made it is that they're bacteria trying to latch on to, like, paradoxes. I wouldn't call them like...
The fact that the scenario of... someone using their life as a kamikaze pilot to try and attempt what Rose did again, the fact that no one thought of doing that again is unlikely. I mean, it was a very dangerous thing that she did, and I wouldn't expect it to happen all the time, because I wouldn't think that the Doctor would encourage it. But there is potential storytelling in that someone who discovers the power of the TARDIS and if they knew about what Rose did in the Parting of the Ways, you would think that, and even if there was like a dire straight situation where the only option left was that, you would think the Doctor may bring it up, and there's probably scenarios where that could have happened. But that is not necessarily a plot hole, but it is a contrivance, because you would expect at some point someone would think, maybe we should try this, and at the very least someone would suggest it, and then the Doctor would say, no, never, that's too dangerous. What else is there? There's some questionable things about the continuity from the Turn Left parallel universe. There's certain things like early on that are like, how did this happen if the Doctor wasn't there? But I think a lot of that is explained by Dalek Khan being in control of the time vortex, which is, again, it's a fix. It's an easy fix, but it does factor into the plot. But there are certain questions about it. I think for me, the biggest problem I have is that the Doctor tells Wilfred and Sylvia that if Donna remembers, she will die, but that's not the case. I think that's probably my biggest... honestly, for me, I mean, I obviously I've talked about how I find the Idiot's Lantern really annoying to watch, and it, makes the 10th Doctor and Rose, cardboard characters. But I think that moment in the End of Time is actually probably my least favourite moment from the entire RTD era, is just the fact that Donna had a defense mechanism because RTD couldn't think of a way around it. That is a moment where I can criticize the show. in that era and say that it's inconsistent and doesn't work. So there are issues. You know, I'm not blindly going to defend it just
exactly.
Because I love
it's the same thing with like when we criticize the sequel trilogy, and people always go with the whataboutisms with the OT.
Yeah,
it's like the OT does have
Return
problems,
of the Jedi has some very
very
big problems.
Yeah, but nowhere near to the extreme of anything from the sequel trilogy.
Luke's plan to rescue Han Solo from Jabba's palace is extremely contrived. The
really
fact
dumb.
that it worked out for them is amazingly lucky.
Yeah.
It's amazing lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
The only way it could even make sense is if Luke Skywalker had seen a premonition in the flames. You know, foreshadowing. Which again, if that did happen, if he did see a premonition in the flames,
that's pretty powerful.
It would explain why it happened, but it would still be poor because that's stupid. It's lazy writing.
Yeah, it's something that we've had like visions, sort of, but they've not been like.
Whereas you compare that to what Rose did in the series 1 finale. The difference is that wasn't a plan. That wasn't something that the Doctor wanted. It was something that he was actively trying to avoid. It was something that the characters, you know, it's something that, whereas like, you know, Rose was taking a risk in the sense of what she saw Margaret do in Boomtown. She says, I have no weapons, I have no plan, I have nothing to get me to where they are. I don't know how to operate the TARDIS. The Doctor hasn't taught me. But I have to try everything I can, and the only source of information I have is that when we opened that TARDIS, it spoke to her. So maybe I'll try and see what happens. I think you have to put in perspective sometimes that a character's motivation and a contrivance in a plot can often cross over, and you have to put in perspective do they both line up in the same scenario? Do they both make sense within?
Yeah.
Then on top of that, then you can start making your argument of, well, is this a well-told story? You have to have your foundation before you can have your pudding.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, we've mucked around massively, so do we want to press play?
Sure.
All right.
See what the point they make.
The problem is we're not doing this on Watch Together, so we're going to have to watch it and then like pause it when they stop talking. Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, or someone just say like pause and we'll pause.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Face concept, and I also think that this master is the most interesting of the revived series. I think there's absolutely merit to John Sims and Michelle Gomez's interpretation, but Sacha Darwin is utterly compelling.
Me too, Jay.
Like this fractured, broken character who he almost seems on the verge of tears every time he's on screen. And that's both really frightening, but also really...
But it's not really clear, so we can't even... There's no one I legit can
it's such an interesting Doctor-Master relationship. And
any statement of where he is.
I think that he does villains really, really well.
I think this Master, in a lot of ways, is what I wanted.
Well, even
John
if it is
Master
way
to be,
later, that's still a problem.
Although I'll put my hand up, I still prefer Missy, but I do really like what he's brought, and because it takes that sort of fractured psyche that Sim had an element of, but it never worked for me because a lot of the time it came across as almost cartoonish and like he was bouncing off the walls because he needed Ritalin. Whereas with this current Master, he's bouncing off the walls, but it feels more like if he stopped bouncing off the walls, he might break down at any moment. And that...
Pause, I'm on 5210.
Wait, you're on 52?
I'm on 5210.
I thought you were on 55.
No.
I thought we were doing 55. Fucking hell.
Oh.
I swear I said 55.
I said 50-50 is where we start.
Oh, you mean 50-50s like we start at the same time.
We're going to have to start again. Jesus.
You didn't word that well enough for me.
Okay. 50 minutes and 50 seconds.
50 minutes and 50 seconds.
Right. Are you ready?
We're on Mr. TARDIS's face.
Yes. Okay.
Alright. You can probably just cut that out.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, Go.
Face concept, and I also think that this master is the most interesting of the revived series. I think there's absolutely merit to Johnson and Michelle Gomez's interpretation, but Sacha Darwin is utterly
I would love to pick his brain, saying why he thinks he's more interesting than Missy and Johnson's master.
He almost seems on the verge of tears every time he's on screen, and that's both really
but why, though?
frightening, but also really like you kind of pity him a little bit as well. And it's such an interesting Doctor-Master relationship.
I'm on 51-23.
Okay, I'll rewind it back.
Yeah. I would... Then my... Well, not really rebuttal, but I'd like to ask, why do you think that is? Why? Why is he like that? Because with John Sim, we knew why the way he was.
I mean, it doesn't matter why. It's all about the themes, right?
Like, the line of...
It's about the feelings.
It always looks like he's on the verge of tears. First of all, I don't even necessarily really agree with
I remember when I heard him say that the first time around, I was like, is he?
Also, he's the most interesting master out of the entire revised series. I think it's like... That is a big wolf.
Well, it seems like most people in this call agree with him.
Well, I'm baffled by that because, like, I don't like Missy overall, but Series 10, her story is like it's interesting because it's questioning the Master's entire character, but it's not like wrecking it because it's like it's a change of but not her changing herself overall. If you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And then with John Sim, it's like I find that the drums such an interesting concept for the character.
Is that not subjective?
Sure, me finding it interesting, but it's like it is more character, like this concept for Sim, like making him act the way he is, giving him an actual reason for being crazy, than for Sasha, where I don't understand why he's crazy.
But to these people, it's not about why, it's about what.
I guess.
Yeah, shall we continue?
Sure. All
right. 3, 2, 1.
It's
go.
Such an interesting Doctor-Master relationship, and I think that he does villains really, really well.
I think this Master, in a lot of ways, is what I wanted the John Sim Master to be, but wasn't quite. Although I'll put my hand up, I still
it's almost as if they're quite similar, but one's better than the other.
I do really like what he's brought, and because it takes that sort of fractured psyche that Sim had an element of, but it never worked for me because a lot of the time it came across as almost cartoonish and like he was bouncing off the walls. Pause. Whereas,
what are you on?
51, 58.
Okay.
Cartoonish and
so
like he was bouncing.
She just said that he found John Sim a bit cartoonish, a bit too cartoonish. Literally, like I can again, the same. I hate that I keep bringing it up, but it's just the like embodiment of the representation of the themes of Sasha just being a complete Saturday morning cartoon. Also, the fact that he just has Cybermen Time Lords is very cartoonish because it feels like it's mixing things together like a child would. Anyway, and that would be something like a cartoon.
Wait till you hear what he says next, because he does actually say that he's bouncing off the walls as well, but you'll hear what he says.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Off the walls because he needed Ritalin, whereas with this current Master, he's bouncing off the walls, but it feels more like if he stopped bouncing off the walls, he might break down at any moment, and that's a vibe I can get behind.
Okay, what time are you on?
52:11.
All right.
Would you say that's not something that Sim had as well?
That's a vibe.
I would say so.
I mean, yeah.
Like the scene between him and Tennant when he's like baby doctor but old. He's like, it's like, when he's talking about the drums, he's just like, can't you hear it? Drums. It's like, listen. Like, it's like, and the doctor says it's only you. And it's like, good. I feel like that's kind of stuff is if he stopped bouncing off the walls. I feel there's more than they're giving Sim credit for this character.
Well, because they're judging based on what they get from the face value of his performance. Also, I will add that Council of Geeks prefers Sim in the End of Time over Series 3.
Oh, I'm fully aware, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting take, that is for sure.
Mm-hmm. Shall we continue?
It's just saying that again, there are so many instances where you can see Sim like feel like he's about to break down.
Absolutely.
Like he stopped bouncing off the room. Fucking hell, the phone call between him and the doctor. Like, fuck off if you tell me that that's not him sort of like quiet down and sort of like acknowledging like the existence around him. Literally talking about Gallifrey, like the whole like, what did it feel like? Burning two great civilizations. You must have felt like God. You know? I feel like they're not giving Sim credit where the credit should be due. That's just my take. That's just my opinionated.
Alright, shall we continue?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, go.
I can get behind.
I feel like if John Sim had like Sacha Dhawan's scripts, he would have been equally as good of a master. Like I feel.
Yep, that's the line. That's the line. That's what I was thinking of. And it's fucking Ace Creeper. I didn't realise it was Ace Creeper. I thought it was Dominic. You said that.
Nah, it was Ace Creeper.
Yeah. What the fuck is he on about? Better scripts. Okay, so with that statement, right, that is an objective statement because he's talking about writing.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot tell me that's subjective. He's talking about the writing. So I can easily say that Spyfall is very fluid.
You could angle it as when he says better, he means something I like more.
He's talking about the script though. Scripts like writing. I don't feel like that's something you could argue. That's so like if he said that, I just sort of like feel like I wish the Sasha like sort of direction of like performance was what Sim had. No, he literally specifically mentioned the script. He's saying that the scripts for Sasha are better than the Sims.
Okay.
That seems very objective to me.
All right then. Well, mate, what if he is then? What if he is?
What is he if he is being objective?
Yeah. What if he is?
Well, then he's wrong.
Okay. Anyway,
and then I mean, like
I'm drawing big blanks.
I know. Okay, here's the thing.
What else can I say?
The reason why, again, I think we've gone over this many times, but Sim scripts are better than Sasha's.
Yeah, but Spyfall's serious and End of Time's silly.
I'm not even talking about End of Time. I'm talking about Sound of Drums. Sound of Drums is great.
Okay.
Very well, tightly written.
Yeah, but but it doesn't have a big plane and it doesn't have a gambler.
It doesn't have Nazis.
It doesn't have Nazis. It doesn't have traveling in time.
It doesn't have Master being captured by the Nazis because he's brown.
Oh my god.
I mean, that's why they captured him. Wait, I'm not saying really. They have that. That's what the Doctor does.
What time are you on?
I'm not. I'm 5218.
5218. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't do anything to Master. That's what the Doctor did. Literally, that's what the Doctor did.
Right.
Scripts.
Like, they catch him because he was literally not white. Like, that's what happens in the story.
Anyway, let's continue. 3, 2, 1, go.
He would have been equally as good of a Master. Like, I feel... Again, I think Sim was used in beyond Series 3. I think Sim was kind of a little bit like shafted in the way he was used in terms of like the end of time.
So the
whole
one story,
using people thing.
He's in World Nothing
See,
as well.
I'm in the minority on that because I actually prefer his Master in that versus Series.
He's great in that. It's just the powers and stuff and the lightning and the.
So he's great except for the powers.
I find his performance a lot more compelling in the end of time.
Right. Yeah. That's true. When the Doctor falls, I feel like he was just.
I would say he's good in part 2, not really part 1.
Well,
he's enjoyable in part 1.
I feel like he really balances that, and I think it is
I agree.
down to the scripts as well as the performance in sense of.
See, it's down to the scripts. He's been very objective there.
Like,
he's got Ainsley Harriott with Tom Baker's scarf
and the proper feelings there towards the Doctor, whether that be positive or negative a lot of the time. It's very interesting to look at that and explore that, and I'm actually excited to see more of him.
Yeah.
Get the general vibe that he's very much.
All right, I'm on 53-21.
Okay, so
the most desperate version.
All right. I would agree that I want to see more of him, but not for the same reasons.
Yeah, I want to see him more because I want to explain.
Yeah, I want an exploration of his linking to the character. I want to hear, his side of the story. I want a justification for why he does what he does. And in hindsight, if Chibnall found a way to write Sacha Dhawan's Master where it was consistent with the character, where he found a really strong motivation behind what he does, he could be a strong Master. Obviously,
absolutely.
Things about like enjoying the performance or not, that's part of it too. But in terms of the character's narrative, I want to see more of him because I want more context. It's actually different.
Exactly. I want the gaps to be filled so I can safely rest at ease that it's a well-structured story that is keeping in line with the Master's character.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with like for example, I am not confident that Chibnall's going to fill in the gap, but I want him to. I hope he does, because it would then make Sacha's Master, at least with a basis, have like understanding of what he is as a character.
Yep. I'll just be back in about 10 seconds.
Okay. You better call this EDAR the Sacha Dhawan Master debate.
And I'm back.
I was just thinking, you better call this like EDAR Mini the...
I was going to say that. EDAR Mini, a conversation about the Master.
There.
Yeah.
I was like saying, I think, call it EDAR Mini the Sacha Dhawan Master debate.
It's not really a debate, to be honest. It's just a conversation.
It's not. Okay, you can call it that discussion then.
Shall we continue?
Sure.
I think Dominic G. Martin said something along the lines of him being dangerous or unpredictable. I can't remember. Anyway.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
Version of the character after undergoing that complete revelation that he's endured, but he's now just completely unable to know how to cope. So, if he's after Missy, he's just gone back into what he believes
Didn't one of them say that?
Him. And for better or for worse,
his
really,
master sometimes comes down.
He's just clearly extremely torn up, and in a sense, he still needs the Doctor, even as that very, very twisted, loose friendship that they have.
In Spyfall tries to kill her multiple times.
To the extent of just going to doing all sorts of things just to catch attention, but
Sasha, the way Sasha plays the role is just exemplary, and it's just, I would say, a terrifying performance. I'd say, because again, this was said, he's nearly on the verge of breaking down every time I see him. So, yeah, extremely well played. Probably my favorite master insanely.
I do want to say, if we're all, I do feel that it's a disservice to have him so soon after. Can we do spoilers for season 10? Is that allowed? The thing that we would spoil in season 10, that it would be a disservice to have him so soon after.
Season 10?
I feel that the relationship between 12 and Missy and John Sims Master being brought into that is done a disservice by having the character come back so soon after that arc is completed.
See, they're all like
real reference in any way to that arc, and
it is quite awkward. This is
Jodie there, and you know she's met this character very recently and had a profoundly, I guess, emotional experience with them, but none of that really seems to influence their current dynamic, which is the main issue I take with it. Although I have to be the unpopular one in the room and say I don't particularly like his performance either.
I've heard that
I agree,
before,
Jay. I'm with you there.
I get why people have it, but the way I square that circle is that it depends on whether or not you take it as a given that the Sacha Dhawan Master is the one immediately following Missy, which is not in evidence right now. That's the natural assumption, but we don't know where this master fits in his timeline.
Fucking know.
He could theoretically be earlier. He could be several regenerations later, not even the one immediately after. And that
What doesn't matter if it's way later? It still doesn't matter. You still need to fill the gap.
Does like the example I will always use.
You can't just say, "Oh, it was 100 years and multiple regenerations down the line."
Thank Russell T Davies for not identifying who the older woman in the End of Time was, so that I can have my head canon.
It's a different scenario that we don't know who she is. We know who the master
is.
That's
having that wiggle room, which I do think,
completely.
at least currently, as we understand,
it's not the same thing at all.
It's not a mystery. Well, it's a mystery then because we don't even know who she is. Whereas we know this is the master.
I don't know that he comes.
He knows the master.
I agree that fixes it for him, but I feel that the Doctor should have a different outlook on it. I'm fine with him being it, but I feel like she should care. Where do you fit in? Are you the one that I helped to get better, and you've just completely thrown it all away? Like, I feel she should be freaking out about that.
This master's so good.
I understand that. I think it's in sense of the audience as well as like it was only 2 series ago. I always said the best time to bring the master back would have been Series 13, if it's 2021, 50 years since Terror the Autons.
They agree that the timeline is up in the air and iffy, but it's more so they just like the betrayal.
I think the audience and maybe the Doctor, it's too soon and it's not mentioned.
But then that makes it really weird when Ace said that he likes the scripts more for Sasha than Sim.
Going through the Matrix and finding that out.
That's the one thing that's really...
I think it's very justified in the sense of what the master found out about the Doctor.
I would still argue that.
Towards just totally snapping, whether that's before or after the redemption. But I totally agree with what you're saying about the Doctor not even questioning it.
Like just saying, like Stand the Drums, and you compare it to Spyfall.
Does change a lot through different
just self-contain those stories.
Showrunners and writers, but to at least address it would have been nice. Doesn't matter whether it's we actually find out where this incarnation comes. Just the Doctor questioning it, maybe, and then Sasha just
I don't think just addressing it fixes the problem.
I feel like something...
It's better than what we got, 100%, but you eventually still need to fill in that gap.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, even a throwaway line to that regard probably would have helped soften the blow, like saying, I thought we were getting somewhere, I thought I helped you. And him being like, nah, as you said, but yeah, I think that... but,
I mean, I would...
I said, there is
if you just said no, I would have been annoyed.
We'll see, but for the Doctor's perspective... Yeah, it did seem a little bit like, she gave up instantly then. Saw him again.
Also, I hate Zoom. Discord.
I have to agree that it would be great if
Zoom's fucking garbage.
She asked him where he fit in and he refused to answer, and that was driving her mental. I would love to see that.
Yeah, that yes, I would totally buy.
I would love character arcs.
I do think that's a very valid complaint that she hasn't even asked the question. And also, I would have seen that for her to ask, where is all this coming from? And he just won't tell her because he knows it'll bug her.
Yeah, I'd love that.
It's not about finding
fucking
out where
acknowledge
it
it, Chris. Jesus Christ.
Having it acknowledged that it's not just totally forgotten about.
It's caring enough to ask the question even if we don't get an answer, which honestly I don't need an answer, but the question should have been asked.
I will say that I think, though, as a writer, you'd be damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you do have to stop the story to ask that question, you're immediately tethering.
It's not stopping the story, though.
That happened years ago that maybe some of the audience haven't watched. Or you're
immediately part of the fucking story.
That moment, that character, with something that happened years ago.
Is this going to come down to that?
I do.
Pause.
I think you're damned if you...
I need to pause here because I need to say something. Is Mr. TARDIS going to go down the road of having too much exposition makes the story boring? Because I hate that excuse.
Oh, it's needed exposition.
Adam, if you're watching this, I'm sorry because you've said this to me before, but it's just how I feel. I don't like the excuse that you shouldn't explain everything just because you need to have a story have pace. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes exposition is necessary to create an actual narrative. And yes, that can make things a little bit boring, but it's necessary.
That's insane.
And if you have the right creativity and tools, you can create scenes where the exposition is actually quite entertaining, if you're smart enough.
Like, imagine if, like what they just suggested, like Jodie asked, like, what happened to you?
I mean, the phone, we go back again. The phone call scene from Sound of Drums is all exposition, but it's one of the best scenes from the whole episode because of how it's
establishing the differences and the sort of like, what would the word be? Sort of like oh god, I fucking forgotten the word. Fuck. But it's like setting up the sort of like rivalry between the two within that story. Like the differences on sort of like the like antagonistic like kind of.
What about the scene where they're eating fish and chips and the Doctor has to give context to Martha and Jack about the past, otherwise the audience won't have perspective on how him and the Master met and where they come from. That exposition is necessary for the story.
Yeah, and it's really good.
Mm-hmm. So
imagine Jodie actually like asked, and Sasha's just like, "Well, I could tell you." Okay, it would be like baiting, which they did that a lot in Series 12 anyway, but it'd be better than nothing. Mm-hmm. So like if Sasha like baits like, "Well, I could tell you."
Right. What
time? There would have been fun in that.
What time are you on?
I'm on 59:14.
Okay, I'm basically the same as you.
Okay.
3.
But yeah,
2,
that point by this time was bad.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go.
If you do, damned if you don't. There's merit to both.
I'd agree, and I've always been on record in saying it's not the job of a showrunner to clean up the previous showrunner's mess. Whether or not, I'm not saying it was a mess. I'm just saying in general, it's just,
it is.
Sort of rule of thumb. Like, it's not
I disagree with that to a massive extent.
Thing was all about and what.
If you want to contain characters
he sort of did his own thing
from previous arcs, from previous showrunners, you have to fill in the gap.
It's a new audience, and you can't really. Yeah, that's a difficult one, I suppose, but.
No, it's pretty simple to me. Like, if you want to write properly.
I mean, I guess they wanted to reintroduce the Master as a proper full-on villain again, so they're probably just best to just try
do the work,
pull the cover over, and just go straight in.
That's lazy writing.
As much as really as
it's called lazy, bad, incompetent writing.
I guess they're trying to just go for that general.
I'm sorry, but you cannot have.
Yeah, it's also like the controversy with the timeless
you just
child.
swept around the rug, but we get the Master back. That's great, right? It's like no.
Here we go. Tell some great stories in the next few years. Give it 5 or 6 years, and it will not be canon anymore. There's a load of stuff from the Stephen Moffat era, like the Doctor ridding the universe of death at the end of Hellbent. And a load of other like universe-altering stuff, which what you ignore can't hurt you.
I'm half human.
And if you don't like the timeless child, fair enough, and you can just the next showrunner can just not acknowledge it, and they can pave their own path. They can change the continuity in their own way.
Well, that's
yeah.
All right.
To be fair, you could frame that moment in the TV movie as a joke, because he's
what moment?
When he says he's half human to the policeman.
Right.
Because he's using it to get past him. He's using it to, like, trick him. So you could actually frame it as him lying. And it's, like, meant to be a joke. However, the reversal of death in Hellbent, you can't frame that any other way than what it is. and it most certainly is canon. whether I like it or
no
not.
one's saying, "Oh, in 5 years it won't be canon, so why bother with it now?"
Hey, did you know that the drums actually aren't canon? Did you know that? Did you know that Classicu is actually not canon?
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
Fuck.
You know that the crack in the wall is actually not canon.
What the fuck are we doing here then? What the fuck is the point of anything then? Well, what's the point of the show?
We'll just restart the game with new rules, I suppose. What time are you on?
I'm on 1 hour and 52 seconds.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
That's part of the adaptability of the show inherently, is that, and actually this is something that I've really appreciated what the show has done, because George, Ace Creeper, is absolutely right that not only is it not the job of a showrunner to correct or undo or whatever what the previous runners did, thankfully that
well, no,
really
if you're going to bring up characters from those, you need to.
In the modern era so far, whatever you think about Chibnall, I don't feel like any of his decisions are
paused.
Okay, so it's not the job of the current showrunner to clean up the previous mess. However, it is the job to bring back characters and elements from previous eras and use them to their advantage. So, Chibnall doesn't have to worry about the Master's character being inconsistent. However, he is allowed to bring back Captain Jack for no reason.
Yeah, and not explaining how he knows about the Siberius.
Of course.
And no Salmon.
Oh yeah, of course not.
You don't need to. That's just fan stuff.
He does have,
reviews would say.
To be fair to Chibnall, he does have an opportunity to do so.
Sure.
In the next episode, but we haven't got it yet.
Here's the thing. Even if they bring it up, it's in a fucking Dalek story, so it's going to feel really out of place.
It's honestly probably going to be an offhanded comment, just like how
silence. It's going to be like, oh, we forgot about this.
Just like how the Silence arc conclusion was an offhanded comment in a dinner scene with Tasha Lamb in Time of the Doctor. That 3 or 4 year story was concluded in a throwaway scene that has, like, I don't know, attempted molesting of the Doctor in it.
That is how you fail as a writer.
Interesting how the Doctor is very willing and happy to spank Clara, but then when he's touched by Tasha Lamb, he's all scared and like, oh no, I'm being assaulted. Excuse me, you utter pillocks. Get your brain screwed on.
Here's the thing, like, what they've said, like, both Ace Creeper, what he said, like, he doesn't think that it's for the showrunner to fix previous showrunners' messes. Do you, as a concept, agree with that? Because I don't think I fully agree with that.
I think it is a showrunner's responsibility to respect what has been established before and build on top of that in a way that is coherent.
Yes. If you exactly, if you're gonna do a Gallifrey story, for example, after Hellbent, you kind of need to, as much as like, hey, yeah, sure, but you need to kind of like reference in whatever story you're kind of doing, reference in some way the one element of Hellbent to, continue sort of like consistency of, if you get what I'm saying.
Oh, I was going to say something, but I can't remember now. It slipped from my mind.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't agree fully with Ace Creeper's like statement there.
Anyway,
and I definitely don't agree. If you're going to bring up previous characters, you have to make sure it flows nicely within the show.
Oh yeah, I was going to say this is probably a controversial opinion. I don't know, because it's quite a popular character, but I think it's very safe to say that for a lot of the time, the 11th Doctor is quite a stupid character. He's arguably the stupidest Doctor there ever has been.
I'd find it hard to argue that.
Very daft. And
I put up the argument that Jodie is pretty dumb sometimes, a bit like, for example, when she like mistakes the card game for Snap.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
That's not how you play Snap.
Yeah, but I would say on an even bigger degree with Matt Smith's, because with Jodie's it's more so like, obviously it is dumb, but with the Snap game, it's more a misunderstanding of human culture, which is something that you often get with like fish out of water aliens. And obviously, it's arguable that the Doctor at this point definitely is not. But the snap thing is, it's something that you would expect like Thor from the first Thor film to do, except probably a bit different context, obviously. However, with Matt Smith's Doctor, I think the level of lack of awareness of what's going on is ridiculous, to the point where I don't even believe it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's not aware that he is sexually assaulting a woman is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
The price of one.
It is absolutely stupid.
Yeah, it's really bad oversight.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Like, sometimes I genuinely despise the way he's characterized. It's saved by the bright spots. Like the God Complex, for example. He's brilliant in that.
Amy's Choice.
However, there are points where I properly despise the way he's characterized, and I just, if you like the Doctor, there's not a problem with that. I know how that feels. When I was a child, I loved him. But to deny that there is, legitimate criticism to the stupidity of his character, it would be denial, because it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is sometimes quite stupid.
He is a very daft character.
Uh-huh.
Played,
for sure.
And
that is why some people love him.
It's played for comedy, but in terms of the Doctor's characterization, I don't.
Here's the thing.
It's funny. It's funny how they. It's
when
how
you're doing jokes around the Doctor's character,
it's
how
funny
smart
how
he is,
people like
fall apart.
It's funny how Lodslaw finds it. He doesn't find it believable that the Doctor would be distressed to the point where he wouldn't be aware that he was emotionally abusing Martha to the degree he was. Yet, like, I find that funny how he finds that unbelievable. But like, I don't think that that's off limits. I feel like that is believable, that he wouldn't quite understand the inner emotional conflict that Martha was feeling, because he doesn't know what it's like to be in a romantic relationship with a human being. He tried with Rose and it didn't work out. But with the 11th Doctor, I don't believe that he doesn't realize that he's sexually assaulting someone. That just seems so... It's so beyond belief. It's so ridiculous. To the point where the only conclusion I can make is that he is aware, and he's doing it on purpose, which is actually quite disturbing. So, fuck you and your Tismy comedy. Anyway, what time are you on?
I am on 1 hour, 1 minute, and 18 seconds.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Him trying to fix or amend or even undo. So here's the thing. Timeless Child, I'm going to touch on it super lightly. I don't hate the concept. I hate that it's the Doctor. I wish that the Timeless Child was literally anyone else other than the Doctor.
Yeah, I guess they have moved on from Master then.
And I deeply hate that. And I
don't think we need to move on from that then. We'll just leave it there.
All right, we're done with that bit.
Well...
Yeah, I pretty much disagree with pretty much almost all they said.
There's parts of it that I would say they do nail on the head to some degree.
Well, they nail on the head the actual criticisms of the Master, of like the placement.
The timeline. They definitely acknowledge that the timeline is fucked and it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it's going to be very.
To be fair, Jay brought it up.
Yeah, true. He brought it up, but at the very least, when he did bring it up, they acknowledged that there is legitimacy to that, and that is something that they themselves.
What I don't like though is them trying to sort of justify it within.
By saying that a showrunner shouldn't be responsible for the previous one's mess. I love when as soon as Ace Creeper said that, he instantly felt bad because he's like, shit, I just called Moffat's era a mess.
I mean, it is, but yeah. I don't even agree with the statement, because you can so easily, you need when you... the example is, if you're going to bring back the Master, you have to, in some way, shape or form, make sure that the character flows from one incarnation to another, or from one arc to another. You have to make sure, because it's your job as a writer, to make sure it makes sense. and you can absolutely make it make sense. You're just fucking lazy, Chibnall.
Well, I mean, I suppose you would have to pin that down to, if he were to adhere to a previous showrunner's continuity, then he wouldn't be able to tell the story he wants to tell.
Well, tough shit.
And
I'm sorry, but
someone could come at you and be like,
"You're paid to do this."
And someone would come up to you and say, "Well, now you're limiting the creative, freedom of the writers by locking them in the cell."
Well, get a fucking idea then. I'm sorry, but just get a better fucking idea if you can't think of one that makes sense.
And what happens if he just, if the only idea he has is that one? What is he going to do?
Well, then he's a shit writer.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I think there is
definitely one idea.
You do have to take into consideration that the longer the story goes on, with the more continuity established, the harder it is to be a showrunner. It's definitely
sure, but the example we're doing right now is from Missy to Sasha Dhawan's Master.
Mm-hmm.
Is it so hard to write the gap between one arc to another?
Apparently.
For Chris Chibnall, yes. He still should fucking do it. He's a writer. He's paid to do this. He's literally paid to do this. And like you just said, what if he doesn't have any ideas?
In regards to reasoning as to why this may have happened, because I know that Chibnall was hired after Series 9.
Yeah.
I have a funny feeling that he outlined his story before Series 10 even aired.
Possibly.
So he's always wanted to tell this story with the Master.
He might have.
Because Series 10 aired, it's now caused... Because I feel like Series 10 is the biggest thing that clashes with the Chibnall era, because it feels like Chibnall is writing the story as if Capaldi regenerated at the end of Hellbent. That's what it feels like to me. Honestly, it feels like that, because I honestly think that's the truth, because that's all he had to work with when he wrote the story, and he's prepared so far in advance that he doesn't want to change it. And now he's stuck in a situation where he now has a Master that's inconsistent from where we left off, because he wrote it before that one was aired. I also find it funny that Moffat had less time to do this than he did, and yet, in my personal, humble, and not very important opinion, I think Series 10 is leaps and bounds better than Series 11 and 12.
I also think it's subjectively better.
Mm-hmm.
It's better written. Yep. It's way more consistent with itself as just a series. So yeah, up yours, Chibnall. You can't write.
Yep.
Like that's what it comes to. This started out as like Master of being poor written, which he is. And now it's down to, it's because Chibnall can't write. He can't be fucked to put in the effort to make like a very well put together, consistent story with a character.
I mean, I would say the tagline "Chibnall can't write's a bit of a straw man, but I get what you're saying. I understand the context of why you're saying
it. He can write. He has written episodes. He just can't write well within a Doctor Who setting, because Broadchurch is good.
Some of his torture is quite good.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. It's just it feels like with Doctor Who, he's just trying too hard. Do you get that vibe? I feel like he is trying way too hard.
I don't know. That's a hard one to ask.
In the complete opposite direction. Weird
because he feels like he's trying hard, but he's also, the writing's quite laboured as well. I don't know how he manages to do that.
He wants his final solutions without putting in the build-up.
Or the other way around. He wants to do a backswing without a follow-through, which is the catchphrase I've been using for Chibnall. When I look at Fugitive of the Jadoon, all I see is backswing. When I look at Can You Hear Me, all I see is an ending without a beginning.
Pretty much.
And those were like two of my more favorite episodes of the series. So that's very bizarre to think about.
I mean, yeah, I thought Can You Hear Me was pretty good to its ending.
Yeah, the very climax of the bloody... they're not Eternals, but whatever they're called. The very moment that they disappear is a bit weird.
God, that's so bad.
But again, like speaking specifically on Yaz's character, her character arc in Can You Hear Me is something that should have been built up to. And it also should have been followed on. So, because the only real thing, even connection, small, even it's not even a literal connection. It's only thematically through emotion. The only connections we get to Can You Hear Me's depression angle is the time when she thought she was going to die in Spyfall and in The Timeless Children.
That should have led to a romance between Ryan and Yaz.
Yeah. And then... that
would have been really good character stuff.
And then in The Timeless Children, when Graham says to Yaz that he thinks that she's braver than the Doctor, which it doesn't feel earned because it's not built up to. All of those three examples of scenes that you got in the 3 episodes could very well still exist in a story if they sewed together character beats in other episodes as well.
Yeah.
It feels like the bones of a skeleton that could work, but it's unfinished. It's half-baked. Because it only has a few parts of the story, doesn't have all of it. And it almost feels like that Chibnall came up with a few ideas for points in the story he wanted to do, but he didn't finish them. And he had to, like, I don't know, hand in his paper. Unfinished. That's the vibe I get from Chibnall. Is he has a bunch of starts, a bunch of middles, and a bunch of ends, but he doesn't connect them together. Which makes his story up in the air, incohesive and puzzling, because I don't know how to feel about it because it's incomplete. So how am I supposed to justify Chibnall if his writing's incomplete? The archive's incomplete. If it's not there, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Like, such as Master is incomplete, and therefore he has no character other than some basic stuff that the Master always does, which doesn't make him unique in any
exactly.
way.
So this is the struggle I have. How am I supposed to say that Series 12 is really good or really bad when I don't even have the answers? They're just... It's all just fucking speculative.
In the grand scheme of things, sure, I would still argue that there are a lot of really bad writing just within
the
episode
the individual
itself.
episodes, with Spyfall specifically.
In terms of the stuff that has not been answered, there's a lack of anything there. I mean, I would argue like a lack of anything is like bad. Like automatically, it's like there's nothing there, so like there's no effort that's been put here. I would say that's bad.
Yeah, that's a good argument. I would say for me, it's usually in most cases it's like
better than nothing.
When a writer does this, for me, it's often I would often use the phrase. I mean, obviously, I've used all backswing no follow through as like a criticism. However, the phrase I would use in terms of my judgment would be skating on thin ice, in the sense that I find it hard to believe that you'd be able to complete this, and I don't think he will. And then once he doesn't, then I can start to look back on it and think, what the hell happened?
I think Chibnall's going to explore the division more than like where the other Doctors line up. I don't think he's going to also explain where the Master lines up at any way.
He also won't add any more context to Yaz's character either. It'll be just left completely unfinished.
Ryan and Graham are leaving, and then pretty much not. Graham's the only sort of character out of the entire TARDIS team.
I think it's safe to say that Series 12's sort of arcs feel like a first draft. Maybe not even a first draft, like a brainstorm that isn't finished. You know, it's a vague concept. It's a brainstorm. It's some of a first draft, but it's so undercooked, unfinished, and there's so many parts of it that feel missing. It's very weird. I
will never get on board with people who think Series 12 was And like a massive improvement on Series 11 when it feels exactly the same, only with things we recognize.
It's more exciting to watch because the pace is faster and it's more eventful.
It's also things you recognize.
It has more superficial energy. And the Doctor's character has more emotions other than quirky. And, yeah, the themes. How else do I put it than that? It's just more exciting to watch because of the superficial energy and because it has more...
The way you look in that is saying it's bad writing.
Pretty much.
Yeah, Series 12, guys. You heard it here first. It's shit.
And when someone tells me that they love Series 12, what I would say to that is...
First off, I'd ask why.
Well, yeah, of course, but what I mean is that I can often assume why. Based on what people have said, I can sort of come with a common assumption. Obviously, I'd have to ask details if I wanted to know details.
Like Series 12,
but what I would say is that what that means is because my outlook on Series 12 is that it's very incomplete. What that means to me is that I would turn around and say, well, then that tells me that you have quite low standards. Because it only takes a very little amount of effort to interest you, to please you.
Yeah, that seems what a lot of people. That's what it seems like with the panel.
I think comparatively, someone who turns around and says they enjoy Chibnall's Who more than say Davies, I would then say that it's probably because you find Davies Who to be overcooked. You find it too much to handle, whereas Chibnall's is a lot...
it's not overcooked, but from their point of view, which is subjective, they find it overcooked.
Yeah, it's very filled to the brim. It's very filled to the brim, which can be intoxicating for some people. I can understand that. So they might prefer Chibnall's Who because it doesn't drive it home as hard as the drama. Which is odd considering he did Broadchurch.
Yeah, it always confused me of like, after watching Broadchurch when learning Jodie was going to be the Doctor, like legitimately I was actually really excited because I really liked Broadchurch, and now watching Series 11 and 12 I'm like, is this the same fucking writer?
Mm-hmm.
It's so confusing
and again,
to me.
I just get the impression that his heart's not in it. That's why his scripts That's why his scripts feel undercooked and unfinished. Because it doesn't feel like
Chibnall did it because obviously he was offered the job.
Yeah, I feel like
and wanted to make big, impactful cultural moments.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like he's doing the bare minimum required to get the paycheck.
I don't even think it's like... There are some things that he's doing bare minimum
like when you look at Series 11, right, people often give it to the excuse of, well, it's meant to be a fresh start. I get the feeling that Chris Chibnall did it because writing Series 11 for him would feel like a day off. You know, it would feel like a break. It would feel like a rest. Like he's got a very easy job on his hands. Because, like, you know, no disrespect to the writers or anything. I'm obviously not in the line of industry, so I don't know the kind of pressure they're put under. But to me, based on how Series 11 turned out, it feels to me like bare minimum requirements and effort were put into it. So, you know, they were able to put out a TV show that met the standards, but they didn't have to put that much effort into the creative process. They could just write something very easy, and then that would make work easier for Chris Chibnall because he wouldn't have to put so much pressure on creating this big storyline. So from a business point of view, I can see why, tactically speaking, he would do that. It's just that creatively, I think that is, you're completely cutting the potential off the show and completely reducing all of what the whole reason why we watch it, because you're making it with the least ambition possible. Then with Series 12, whether that be a part of his grand plan, whether that be demand by BBC, or whether that be him thinking, you know, at this point I need to start ramping it up a bit. Again, it still feels like, despite the fact that it has more connections to an overall arc than Series 11 does, it still feels like he's trying to do the minimum required to fill the quota. And that's why his stories feel unfinished. He's added in all these things that, again, like, he's done drama before. He knows how to write drama, but he's not completing his story because it doesn't feel like he wants to. It feels like he's only doing it because it's his job. So he's putting in these dramatic moments that he would put into other stories, but he's doing so because he has to, not because he wants to. And it's extremely frustrating, because I honestly think if Chibnall really set his mind to it, he actually might have been able to pull off something. But because he isn't, it's very, very frustrating. And I wish
with I do have issues with some of his ideas, not even just his writing. Like the Doctor being the timeless child is a ridiculous thing. Like regardless if it was well written or not. Like I was like the Doctor being is all like a main reason why the timeless exists, putting her on a pedestal. Not because she's a woman, guys. Come on, I'm not fucking sexist. But just the Doctor as a character, which is something I do not like. I think a lot of people don't like. That we talk to you about it. That we don't like when the Doctor is put on this pedestal. We like when the Doctor is like a shit Time Lord who's like a rebel.
It's I can't define it as black and white as that. There's a nuance to it, and I have to go into detail to explain the difference.
Sure.
Because there are times the Doctor is put on a pedestal that I really like, but then there's also times that he's put on a pedestal, or she, that I don't, and it's all situational. I don't quite know where to draw the line, to be honest, but I know what I like and what I don't. Sure. I find the Doctor being put on a pedestal in A Good Man Goes to War unessential to the story. I find him being this sort of wizard that saves the children from all comers in the time of the Doctor ridiculous. Like it's not believable that he would be able to fend off all these enemies for thousands of years, and if he did, that makes all of those villains completely and utterly worthless, because we're not actually shown. The only thing we're ever shown is sort of one-on-one combat. So how am I supposed to believe that the Doctor was able to do this? And the fact that Moffat makes it that, well, the Doctor always wins. Why would I ever invest in any stakes in a story if all I can expect is the Doctor is going to prevail every single time with ease? That's just ridiculous. But then, when you take a story like, say, The Fires of Pompeii or The Waters of Mars, where the Doctor is put on a pedestal in the sense that he has the power to change time and the universe, and he's left with the responsibility to make that difficult decision, that's when you get the pinnacle of the writing for the character.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there is a difference in its approach.
It depends on the situation.
I also think the context of the Series 3 finale is actually quite different to how it's handled in something like A Good Man Goes to War or The Time of the Doctor. Even though people would probably mistaken it for the same thing, I do think the writing around it is quite different, and the way it approaches the subtext of the Doctor being put on this pedestal. People often use Space Jesus as the metaphor, because I mean it's more than a metaphor. He literally floats, and then in Voyage of the Damned, he's actually lifted by angels, which is very interesting imagery. But again, there are nuances in the writing that differentiate it from other times it happens. So it all depends for me on how it's executed. And with Moffat, I often found it hard to believe and didn't benefit the story. It felt a bit too almost, felt forced. Then with Chibnall, it's a bit more like, it's weird because in the exposition, he explains that the Doctor means a lot to the history of the lore, but then immediately has the Doctor deny it as important, which is kind of like it's almost like a ham-fisted version of what I would want the character to be, where my ideal is that the Doctor is revealed to have like this past that they don't want, almost like an unexpected, this is what your life was before you were the first Doctor, and then the Doctor rejecting it, saying, I'm not that person, I don't identify with that, and I can make my own decisions. Like, that kind of story could have been explored in great detail, and I would imagine someone like Russell T Davies, or even Moffat for that matter, would delve into that. The problem is Chibnall doesn't do that. He just plays it off very bare minimum and has the Doctor just be like, I'm the timeless child, but I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. And there's no exploration at all of how the Doctor feels about it at all.
Yeah, exactly. I do not understand what being the timeless child actually changes for the Doctor from her perspective.
Well, it doesn't. That's the thing. That's the problem. Is that Chibnall doesn't have it change anything at all.
Yeah, I guarantee you he's going to talk about more of the division.
She just rejects it.
I guarantee you.
And then the only conflict we have is that the fact that the Master burned Gallifrey over finding it out. So the only conflict, the only person that really cares about it is the Master. The Doctor doesn't even care that she was the timeless child. She just rejects it.
Because she's her own woman.
Yeah, it's just dumb. And there's so much brilliant potential on the table for going into the Doctor reacting to finding out this just groundbreaking news about her life, but it's obvious that she just doesn't care, and that's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So, all backswing, no follow through is going to continue to be my catchphrase for Chibnall, because the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. He is, objectively, a bad writer for Series 12 and 11.
And there you have it, folks.
And Sharon. Yeah. Yeah, it was fucking... Yeah, whenever bad Chibnall, bad.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about why the Master is bad in Series 12.
Quite worried about if he sticks around for the 60th. I'm a bit worried about what he's got planned for it.
Chibnall.
Yeah.
I'm worried. It's gonna be something to do with a fucking division or something.
And imagine all the Doctors coming back.
The Doctor was actually the villain, and now the new Doctor must face her old demons of the Division Doctor. Fuck, imagine if I just gave Chibnall his fucking 60th anniversary idea.
You are the chosen one. Oh, sorry. I'm a bit socially awkward. I don't care. Right? I'm no space Jesus. I'm just some bloke.
God,
well, I'm some gal.
Johnny's Doctor is so bad. God. Oh God! Imagine putting Spyfall in your top 10 all the time.
Yeah.
It no good.
To be fair, Joey put it in his top 10 New Who stories, not top 10 classic and new.
So
it's not all time, is it? Unless, of course, you don't count classic Who as canon. Because
it should. The only top 10 Spyfall should be in is top 10 pieces of media that are contrived and stealing from better things.
Well, Force Awakens would be at the top, wouldn't it?
Yeah, then second would be Spyfall.
It's quite a big call. There's quite a lot of things that steal.
Spyfall is the Force Awakens of Doctor Who.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's shit, contrived, and steals ideas from better stories.
So Rey is still a worse character than the 13th Doctor?
Yes. Doesn't make her good in any way, but she is better than Rey, because at least the Doctor isn't a Mary Sue.
How would you say Sacha Dhawan's Master compares to Kylo Ren?
Oh, that's a tough one.
The thing is with Kylo Ren is we have hindsight because we've seen the whole trilogy.
That is true. He is awful in all three films.
Yeah.
Oof. I would probably...
There's nothing about Kylo Ren that's up in the air, so we know exactly what he is.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I guess Darwin is better, even though he's still a bad master. Yeah.
Say, really.
Like I
mean, Adam Driver's a really good actor, but
oh yeah, he's great. He's a great actor.
Yeah.
He's just awful because of what he's given in the sequel trilogy. It's fucking dog shit.
I'll show you the dark side.
Does it hurt? But yeah, it's like the thing is like with
I think it really hurts when people, because I can with despite all the nostalgia I have for the prequels, I can go out there and say that the execution of the romance storyline is not well done for many reasons. And then, you get people that go out and say, yeah, and then they'll say that the fucking Ray and Kylo Ren romance is a masterpiece, and I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's arguably just as bad.
Yeah.
So, fuck you.
Yeah. But like, think of
and like, don't give me that stupid excuse of but because people will come and be like, but Adam Driver's a much better actor. I'm like, that doesn't matter. The writing is garbage.
Yeah.
It is rotten.
Yeah, the performance doesn't matter at that point. With the final thing I'll say with Darwin is, at the very fucking least, with part 1, I appreciated the little hints of him actually being the master, because at least it's not bullshit out of nowhere.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I got to say this before I forget, because I don't want it to slip from my mind. If Adam Driver played Anakin in the prequels and Daisy Ridley played Padme, those scenes in Attack of the Clones would still not be good.
Yeah, they'd be terrible.
Because the writing is a problem, and it's the same thing with the sequels. The writing is shit. So don't give me that excuse that the actors are better, because it doesn't.
Utter garbage.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I would even argue there are some scenes in the prequels where Hayden Christensen actually pulls off the role the way it's written. So
yeah,
But
not just the men, but the women and the children too.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the thing about that scene is it hurts to watch because it's quite ham-fisted and heavy-handed, but at the same time, like, the way Anakin's character is written,
is fine.
It kind of makes sense that he's like that because he's frustrated.
I think Hayden does a fine enough job.
I think he's much better in the Tatooine section of that film than he is in the rest of it.
Yes, I agree.
His strongest performance comes in that part, and also the brief scenes he has with Obi-Wan and Coruscant and Geonosis.
Mm-hmm.
The Naboo section he can rot in hell, because Hayden Christensen being directed to do dialogue that's written that's meant to be based off like a 1930s panto-esque romantic comedy, mixed in with the fact that he's having to deliver lines like a robot because George Lucas thought it would be a good idea for him to foreshadow Vader with having a boring voice. That does not suit him at all. But then when you get to Tatooine, you get the scene with him and Watto. You get the scene where he's frustrated about life, about not being able to fix his problems. You get a scene where his mother dies. He actually portrays the character the way that he's meant to. So to say that Hayden Christensen has no scenes where he doesn't act the role in the way that it's written is ridiculous, because that's just untrue. And for me to say that Adam Driver doesn't portray the character as written would also be ridiculous, which is why I don't criticize it, because he does act the correct character in the way it's written. The problem is the way it's written is terrible and makes no sense. It's a jumbled pile of Christmas tree lights where he's an unpredictable character because you have no idea what he's doing, what he's thinking. There's no precedent for it. There's no stakes, and there's nothing to suggest that any of the decisions he makes make any sense, because he's so off the walls and there's no reason for it. It's literally just conflict for the sake of conflict. Cannot tell me he's a good character because the theme of the film is conflict. That's ridiculous. That is absolute rubbish. And to bring that back to the prequels, it's not a theme of loss, it's an actual event that happens in the film. Anakin's mother dies, someone he loved, someone he wanted to save from slavery, someone he wanted to bring to Coruscant to show her a better life, someone he wanted to see him grow up and become a man, was taken away from him by the Jedi, by the slaver, Watto that wouldn't allow Qui-Gon to take more than one. Justifiable reasons why he's frustrated that he can't see her ever again, the fact that he dreams about her, the fact that when he visits her, when she dies, he feels frustrated. It's not themes, it's actual actions in a story. You cannot tell me that the way that Kylo Ren, especially in something like TLJ, the way he's written in that, makes sense, because it does not. It's all painted like a metaphor, but it's not executed like a story. It's a load of inconsistent horse shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Being cringed by a performance is fair enough reason to dislike something. But to say that painting a fucking pretentious abstract art painting has validity when it has nothing to it, and it contradicts what's been established before, you're painting on top of a canvas that's already been painted on. To say that you're allowed to break all the rules because the themes of the film are things that you enjoy in storytelling does not make it a objectively well-written story. It only makes it something that you enjoy to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Right there, guys.
I just need to blow off some steam.
Yeah.
But it legitimately angers me when people ignore criticisms because of their, fucking feelings towards something.
Yeah.
In this EDAR, I spent about an hour and a half advocating for an opinion I don't agree with, because I can accept criticism, and I recognize that there is an argument, and in doing so, I, with your responses, provided an argument against the opposition. Right? I didn't ignore that there are criticisms, there are people that complain about it. I addressed them. I brought them up. I played devil's advocate. I did everything I could to try and represent the opposition. Obviously, it probably would have been a bit more effective if there was someone that was on the opposition that could speak for themselves. But I recognize that there are objective criticisms and validity to recognizing the consistency of writing, which is why I can openly admit that Donna having a defense mechanism after Journey's End and in the End of Time is dumb, poorly written, because Russell T Davies couldn't find a way out of that situation. So it would be very helpful if those people who are causing such a fuss would actually, maybe start to look at the things that they like with a bit more of a critical eye, so we can all start to understand each other a bit better. Because, going on Twitter and telling me that I only like The Empire Strikes Back because of nostalgia, because I said something bad about The Last Jedi, is stupid. Especially when I can give you about 100 reasons why that film is well written, but of course you would only deny it because your point of view is different to mine. Yes, and then when you give your reasons why you like The Last Jedi, me criticizing them and finding responses to that doesn't make me wrong. It just means that I disagree with your point of view on it, and me finding something that I can, discover in the writing, proof in the pudding. You can't just go back and say, oh, but then all art is subjective. It's just a kid's film for space. Sorry, I was going to say kid's film for space wizards. Space Wizards film for children. No, because that same argument could be applied in the reverse direction. It wouldn't have any meaning either.
It's a show about time wizards meant for children.
So, anyway, now that I've had that rant over, we should probably wrap up this EDAR because it's been 2 hours and that's probably enough for a mini, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. So yeah, we discovered that Slusher's Master, is not actually that good. Well, we know that Series 12 is not that good.
Yep. I can say that and at the same time say I like the actor. It's okay.
I like the actor, I just don't like his performances.
Yeah? Well, again, I was just trying to relate this back to recognizing criticism. I can simultaneously criticize the writing and enjoy the performance at the same time. It is possible.
Sure.
Right? And to say that you like something makes it good writing, and to say that when you dislike something it makes it bad writing is irrelevant. It's not.
It's the big moment for me was when I brought up the scripts. That was the big moment for me.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm like, oh, that seems to be talking about writing. That seems to be going on about... Because the statement he said was that... he thought that Sasha's scripts were better than Sim's.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an opinionated discussion about Doctor Who. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
But when you try and claim that you know the facts and you don't, people are going to criticize you. You have to expect it. When you go in and claim to know all the facts and deny people that criticize it, that's wrong. Because, if you're going to go in and say that you think you know the objective qualities of a story, you are open to criticism because recognizing something as objective requires full understanding, full context. You have to look at all the aspects, right? So, don't try and be too big for your own boots, is what I'm saying. That's why I often avoid talking objectively, because I don't think I have all the answers. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It absolutely exists. Objectivity does exist in storytelling. But if you're going to have a conversation where you talk about your opinions, maybe try and stay away from that, which is something that I often do. I try and stay away from objectivity because then it makes it easier for me to talk about my opinions.
Sure.
But obviously, a lot of people don't recognize that. They only see art as subjective and everything is moldable. And, anything's possible. Anything's relevant.
Anything is possible if you don't think about consistency.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, shall we wrap up this EDAR here?
Sure.
Right then, well, thanks for joining us for this spontaneous EDAR mini. I know it wasn't live, but we needed to get this recorded in the can while we were sitting here with things to say. So, yeah. Bye.
Boy.